everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from April 30th, 2021, and I'm recording this on October 26th, 2021. Had to record this a little earlier than typically, so hopefully things won't change too much in the last half of this week before you guys see this. I always give the dates so you know when this information is most relevant. And as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 from that week and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. This week we got 17 books to talk about. A good mixture of comic buzz and just the market moving and show and option news and a couple of covers. So a decent mix in the kinds of books that we had on the list this week. And really we do this so that we can understand what factors made these books hot, what has been affecting them since, so we can all understand what books we should chase, what books we should be patient on, and hopefully make a little better decisions in the purchases that we make when we're chasing hot books. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's books. First up, we have Sweet Tooth #1. This hit the list because the trailer for the Netflix show dropped. I think it was Netflix. Maybe I got that wrong now. Anyway, the trailer for the show dropped. We've since had the show, but back then it was raw copies were going for 200 plus of this comic. Now raw copies are going for 50 to 125. Pretty widespread on these, but still going for pretty good numbers. It's not nearly that 200 plus. That's even with the show being a bit of a hit. 9.8s are going for 450 to 600, but there hasn't been any sale on those two recently. So it's been a little while since we've had one of those sale. I thought this one would continue to do well because of when the show was dropping and everything, but no, this one is definitely down. Also kind of goes to show the trailer hype seems to be the peak of the hype on some of these books. That right after the trailer seems to be when they get as hot as they're going to get. Even when the show comes out, that sometimes does not reach the hype of the trailers. Next, we have Once Our Land #1. This hit the list because supposedly there's an animated movie of this coming. Back then it cost raw copies to jump to $40 to $50. 9.8 was going for $250. But this is just kind of a couple issues, basically a very short story. There wasn't any kind of follow-up to this. I didn't think it would do that well, and this one has definitely crashed back down. It's only going for $5 to $15 for a raw copy. No recent 9.8 sales, and not many sales, period, just because the asking prices on this one are still pretty high. But yeah, $5 to $15 is all it's actually selling for. Next, we have Paper Girls #1, and this hit the list because we had some casting announcements that came out about the show that's supposed to be coming for this series. Back then, raw copies jumped up to about $25, and 9.8 was going for around $215. Now it's $15 to $40 for raw copies. 9.8s are $125 to $200, so they've taken a step back, but overall this has been pretty steady. A little bit of an I'll be back. You could do better than it was back then, but been pretty steady. This show is still supposed to be coming. We'll see when it happens, for sure. Next, we have a couple of comic buzz. Well, this was kind of option news also, but comic buzz as well. There was supposedly a series coming, but this is Something Is Killing the Children #1, the A cover. So this has just been a red hot series now for a long time. It's been on the list multiple times. Back then, raw copies for the A cover were hitting $325. 9.8 was hitting $1,000. Since then, this book has actually been pretty steady. It kind of finally, I guess, kind of hit its ceiling. It's been setting $800 to $1,000 for 9.8s pretty much ever since then. Raw copies are a little higher. There's $400 to $600, but actually it's hard to even find a raw copy of this book at this point on the market. Most people that have them either are keeping them or have slabbed them to sell. So yeah, it's hard to even find a raw copy on this one. But the 9.8s are most of the sales, and they're still in that very same range they were back in the spring, and have pretty much been all summer. Next, we have Something Is Killing the Children #1, the Jenny Frison variant. This one does not go for as much as that regular A cover. Raw copies are going for $100 to $175. Now they were 9.8s are down to $300 to $400. Back in the spring, they were $375 to $400. So this one has also been pretty steady over the last 6 months or so. It's kind of hit the mark where it's been setting. Maybe if we get more show news or something like that, these two books might move. But at this point, they've been pretty steady over the last 6 months. Next, we move into our first of 3 covers that made the list this week. The first one is The Marvels, #1, the Gabriel Del Otto 1 in 50. This Captain America Spider-Man Del Otto cover was going for $100 to $200 raw when it came out. Now it's $70 to $100 raw. 9.8s are going $100 to $200. So this one has definitely been an I'll be back. Definitely would have been better if you'd been patient on it, for sure. So next we have Alien #1, the Patrick Gleason 1 in 25 second print. So another one of those incentive second prints. You guys know kind of what I think about those. But anyway, raw copies of this second print were going for 50 to 60 on this 1 in 25 back then when it first came out. It is not going anywhere near that. This is, yeah, if you invested in this one, this was a mistake. Basically, there's only been 2 recent sales of this cover since the middle of September. A raw copy went for $8.50 plus shipping. A 9.8 went for $102.50 plus shipping. That's it. They're only asking $25 for raw copies. They're still not selling, so this one is definitely down. Turned into a bit of a dumpster fire if you invested $50-$60 in this one when it came out. Next, we have Silk #2, the 1 in 25 Rose Besh variant. This is kind of her second cover that really kind of hit the market after that Spider-Woman one. So people kind of jumped on this 1 in 25 at $80, which is, triple ratio. Usually that does pretty well, but if it gets that far, but this one did, and this one did hold a little higher than normal. It's holding around double ratio, 40 to 60 right now. 9.8 will cost you only 75 to 125. So this one definitely turned into a bit of a trap. It's basically half to not quite half of what it was back then. But still going for double ratio, which is actually really good for a 1 in 25, just not what it was when it first came out. Next, we're moving into our comic buzz, which we actually have a bunch of this week. Kind of rare, not to be dominated by MCU, but actual comic buzz. First, we have Nottingham #1, the second print. This was a pretty popular series. Plus, this print run ended up not meeting orders, so maybe it was underallocated on purpose or whatever, but it was underallocated compared to orders. So the second print was immediately going for $30. Seems like a lot of the steam has fallen out of this particular series from when it first came out. It's only a $5 to $15 book now for this second print. 9.8s literally have sold from $20 to $50, so not a lot of value there right now. This one definitely turned into a bit of a trap if you were chasing this one. Next, we have Berserker #1, the third print, so another extra printing that hit the list. I had to wonder if this was actual buzz or if this was just, hype or what was going on with this. But this book was jumped right up to $40 when this third print came out of the #1. Now it's sitting 20 to 30, so it's sitting about half what it was then. 9.8 will only run you $50 to $100 on this particular third print. So another one that's definitely well down from what it was when it first released. Next, we have We Live #1. This hit the list. Not because it was necessarily optioned or anything else. It was just kind of getting some buzz. It had been nominated for some awards. So people were just kind of chasing this book a little bit. Raw copies back then were going for $40. 9.8s were going for around $200. This one has taken a bit of a step back. It's 20 to 50 now. 9.8s are 100 to 175. So definitely, and I'll be back on this one. Everything I've heard is good about this one. I need to get the trade. I just haven't got around to grabbing this particular trade so I can read this. But looking forward to reading it at some point in the not too distant future, hopefully. So next we have Black Widow #6. This was the first appearance of Lucy Niang, or Nguyen, maybe. Probably is how that's actually pronounced. So kind of a new protege of Natasha that they have introduced. So she first appeared in this book. It was going for $10 to $15 when it was released. Now it's 5 to 20. 9.8 is going for around 100. So this one's actually been very steady from when it first came out. I'll be back in the fact that you could definitely find some deals if you were patient and looked for it. But been pretty steady. We'll see. They've been using this character basically she's appeared in every issue since. So we'll see where they go with this character, but supposedly they have some plans for her, so we'll see. And we also have another copy of this book. We have the Raza 1 in 25. It's the next book on our list. Again, the same first appearance. This 1 in 25 was going for 80 when it first came out. This one's actually up, and it's our only up book of the week. It's going for 100 to 125 right now. 9.8s are going for 250 to 300. So I guess there's some belief in this character, at least so far. This 1 in 25 at least has jumped up quite a bit in value. We know some of these 1 in 25s or these first appearance of modern characters tend to do really well. I think some people are betting on that, at least with this one. Next, we have all new Wolverine #1, first appearance of Laura as Wolverine. So this is when X-23 kind of graduated, took the title of Wolverine after he was dead for a while, like every other character in comics just about. But this one hit the list because it was announced basically that she was going to be part of the new X-Men team. She was going to be a member of the main X-Men team going forward, at least for a little while. Raw copies were going for $20 back then, and 9.8 was up to $140. Now, another one that's been pretty steady. Raw copies are still sitting in that $20, $25 range. 9.8s are going for $100 to $150. So this one's been very steady, kind of worth it. Hasn't really been too many bargains out there. It's been basically this price. So we went with worth it on this one. So a book I really enjoy. If you've never read this all new Wolverine run, I recommend it. I really enjoyed it. So next we have a book that hit the list just because of the market and what it was doing back in the spring. We were kind of a ways away from the trailer for the movie and everything. It just was, the book was moving. And that is Amazing Spider-Man #300, the first appearance of Venom. Back then, a 9.8 hit $7,800, which was more than double what it had been just a few months before that. So this book was just moving back in the spring. Really didn't necessarily have anything to do with the movie as much as just the way the market was going. Now, raw copy, even with the movie having come out, raw copies are setting around $500 to $800. 9.8s are setting $5,000 to $7,800. So there's been a recent $7,800 sale, but most of the sales have been $5,000 to $6,000 to maybe $7,000. There's been a scattering of what these 9.8s have been going for. Definitely deals to be had. So this one is down over this period. Obviously, this is a long-term, a straight cash book, but right now it's kind of like if you're picking your spots, you could actually get a pretty good deal on one of these if you're, if you're patient and smart about it. At least you have been able to over the last 6 months. Next, we have Alias #1, and this is our first kind of MCU rumor this week. This book hit the list because there was rumors that Kristen Ritter was going to come back and actually officially kind of join the MCU after being on the Netflix show as Jessica Jones. This is the first appearance of Jessica Jones. Obviously, this book, raw copies back then jumped to $100 plus. 9.8s were going for $450, $500. This one is also down. This news is kind of cool, so we don't know if we're getting her for sure or not still, I don't think. Now it's a $60 to $100 book for a raw copy. 9.8s are setting $350 to $400, so they backed up about $100. So definitely an I'll be back on this one. A book that I like that I've never grabbed, but probably now might be a good time if she does actually show up in the MCU. So, and then our last book of the week, not really sure why it hit the list. There was no real news, but this is Uncanny X-Men #161, The Origin of Magneto. Maybe it had nothing to do with news. Maybe this was just another market book. I don't know what was going on here, but raw copies jumped up to $35. A 9.8 went for $130. There was a bunch of sales, even though there was no news. Now raw copies are kind of $5 to $30, depending on their condition. 9.8, only 2 sales, both of them way back in mid-September. 9.8 went for $170, one went for $230, which is up, but so few sales, and a ton of sales since then have all been raw copies. So we're going to call this down, and I'll be back based on those raw copies. So that is the list for this week. There were 17 books, like I said, a lot of comic buzz, a lot of indie books on this, a few covers, not much in the way of MCU stuff, a little bit of comic market. on that ASM 300, just showing you how high the market really spiked in the spring, and that it does appear to be correcting a little bit right now this fall. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.